Freedom from the victim mindset insights. The human mind has a remarkable ability to create both suffering and liberation. One of the most subtle forms of mental suffering is the victim mindset, a state in which individuals unconsciously identify with pain, injustice, or misfortune, allowing external circumstances to define their inner reality. Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual teacher widely known for his work on presence and consciousness, addresses this issue extensively in his teachings. According to Tolle, the key to freedom lies not in changing external circumstances, but in shifting one's inner relationship to life itself. 1. Understanding the victim mindset. The victim mindset is fundamentally an identification with suffering. It arises when a person believes that life is happening to them, rather than recognizing that life is happening and they are a conscious participant. In this state, every difficulty, setback, or interpersonal conflict becomes a validation of personal suffering. The mind clings to the story of what has been done to me, reinforcing feelings of helplessness, resentment, and blame. Tolle emphasizes that the victim mindset is not about actual suffering or injustice, it's about the mental and emotional structure that identifies with it. For example, two people may experience the same event, a failed project at work. One person may see it as an unfortunate incident but move on, learning from the experience. Another may spiral into self-pity, replaying the event endlessly, feeling powerless and consumed by resentment. The difference lies in the identification with suffering, the mental habit of saying, "This is happening to me, and I am powerless." 2. The root, identification with the mind. At the core of the victim mindset is the ego, or the sense of a separate self that Tolle describes in his books such as The Power of Now and A New Earth. The ego thrives on resistance and conflict, needing a sense of me versus them, or me versus life itself. When we identify with our thoughts, emotions, and the story of our suffering, we become prisoners of this egoic structure. The victim mindset is a natural extension of the ego. It keeps attention focused on external causes of suffering rather than recognizing the inner freedom available through presence. Tolle states that as long as we believe we are our pain or our circumstances, we remain trapped in the cycle of suffering. 3. Recognizing the patterns. Freedom begins with awareness. Tolle often urges his students to observe the mind without judgment. The first step in transcending the victim mindset is to notice when the mind is creating stories of blame, resentment, or helplessness. Common patterns include 1. Self-pity, dwelling on perceived injustices and seeing oneself as weak or powerless. 2. Blame, assigning responsibility for one's emotional state entirely to others or to circumstances. 3. Resentment and anger, holding grudges and replaying events mentally to reinforce the sense of being wronged. 4. Ruminating on the past, continuously reliving past traumas, failures, or mistakes, keeping the ego alive and active. The key is not to suppress these thoughts but to observe them as they arise. By noticing them, you begin to create a space between your true self, the conscious observer, and the reactive mind. This space is the beginning of freedom. 4. The power of presence. According to Tolle, the antidote to the victim mindset is presence, fully inhabiting the now without judgment or resistance. Presence shifts awareness from mental stories to immediate experience. When a person is fully present, they are no longer identified with the past or projecting into the future. The egoic narrative of "I am a victim" loses its power. Presence involves times observing sensations, feeling your body, noticing breath, and grounding yourself in physical experience. Times accepting the now, fully allowing what is to be, without resistance, even in uncomfortable circumstances. Times disidentifying from thoughts, recognizing that thoughts and emotions are not the essence of who you are, they are transient phenomena in consciousness. Tolle often says that suffering is amplified by resistance to what is. When you resist the present moment, you strengthen the victim mindset. Acceptance is not passive resignation, but an active engagement with reality, which paradoxically brings the power to act from a place of clarity and freedom. 5. Transcending pain body. A central concept in Tolle's teaching is the pain body, a semi-autonomous energy field composed of accumulated emotional pain. The pain body feeds on negative thinking and victimhood. When triggered, it reinforces the egoic mind's narrative of suffering, making one feel perpetually wronged or powerless. Freedom from the victim mindset requires becoming conscious of the pain body. This involves 1. Noticing when the pain body is active, recognizing feelings of anger, hurt, or fear as energies that arise in you rather than as defining truths. 2. Observing without feeding it, instead of reacting automatically, acknowledge the feeling without judgment or identification. 3. Bringing awareness into the body. The pain body can only be diminished when attention moves from thought patterns to direct, conscious experience of the body and the present moment. With consistent practice, the intensity of the pain body decreases, and habitual reactions of blame, anger, and self-pity weaken. 6. Responsibility without blame. A common misunderstanding is equating the victim mindset with actual life challenges. Freedom from victimhood does not mean ignoring injustices or avoiding responsibility. Tolle clarifies that true freedom arises when we respond from presence rather than reaction. This means times accepting responsibility for your life without blaming yourself or others for what has happened. Times understanding that external circumstances are not inherently controlling your inner state. Times recognizing that conscious action is far more powerful than reactive response born from egoic suffering. In other words, a person free from the victim mindset does not passively accept abuse or injustice, they act from clarity, not from fear, resentment, or identification with suffering. 7. Forgiveness and non-resistance. Forgiveness is a natural extension of presence. Tolle emphasizes that forgiveness is not about condoning wrongdoing, it's about releasing the inner identification with suffering. When you stop feeding the story of being wronged, you dissolve the victim identity. Non-resistance to life's situations, accepting what is without mental struggle, breaks the chain that keeps the ego alive. 8. Practical steps to freedom. Tolle's teachings offer practical steps to free oneself from the victim mindset. 1. Awareness of thought patterns. Notice when your mind drifts into blame, self-pity, or resentment. 2. Anchor in the present. Use breath, body sensations, or environmental awareness to return to the now. 3. Observe the pain body. Acknowledge emotional reactivity without identifying with it. 4. Conscious choice. Respond rather than react. Choose clarity over habitual suffering. 5. Acceptance of life. Embrace situations as they are, even while working to change what can be changed consciously. 6. Forgiveness and release. Let go of grudges and mental attachments to past harm. Through consistent practice, these steps gradually erode the victim mindset. Life becomes less about what is happening to you and more about conscious engagement with the present moment. 9. Transformation through consciousness. Ultimately, Eckhart Tolle teaches that freedom from the victim mindset is not a moral or psychological achievement, it is a shift in consciousness. The identification with suffering, the egoic sense of me versus life, dissolves when attention is fully anchored in the present. The mind stops creating unnecessary resistance, and one experiences the freedom inherent in simply being. This freedom manifests as times inner peace regardless of external conditions, times clarity in decision-making without reactive emotion, times empowerment to act from presence, not fear or resentment, times a deeper sense of connection with life and others. By recognizing that suffering is not personal but a mental construct, the sense of victimhood loses its grip. One moves from a life of reaction to a life of conscious choice, where presence replaces pain-based identification. 10. Conclusion. Freedom from the victim mindset, according to Eckhart Tolle, is less about changing life and more about changing one's inner relationship with life. It involves transcending egoic identification, observing the pain body, practicing presence, and embracing acceptance. It is a path of conscious awakening where suffering is acknowledged but not internalized. Through awareness, non-resistance, and presence, the victim mindset dissolves naturally, revealing a deeper reality that our true self is not the mind, the story, or the pain, but the conscious, witnessing awareness in which life unfolds. In this state, freedom is not a distant goal. It is the natural experience of simply being, fully awake and unbound by the illusions of the ego.